Satnam, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another episode in our continuing series, Your Miracle Mantra. And as usual, we're going to start out by chanting the Shabad Dandan Ram Das Guru for 11 minutes. And then we will discuss a few things. So while people are arriving, I'll just let you know that, remind you that if you're new to this program, we encourage you to either just chant along with this Shabad as we sing it, or you can meditate on it silently. And another good option is to do it as a meditation where there's a particular mudra, and you take your right hand and make a fist with your thumb up, and then take your left hand around that thumb. Wrap the left hand around the thumb and make a fist. Then relax your right fingers and bring them up around the back of your left hand. And then you place it relaxed and gently at your heart center, and your elbows are relaxed at your sides. And you can have your eyes closed or fixed at the tip of your nose. And again, you can just meditate silently, listening to the words, or you can chant along. And when done with this mudra, it's a meditation to release fear of the future. So, during this time of COVID-19 pandemic, many people are dealing with that kind of feeling. So if you have that, just as you're chanting, as you're listening, just to feel that anxiety, that fear, just let it get moved out and replaced with this mantra, with the nod of these sounds. Let them fill that space within you. And we're projecting a sense of calm to arrive, and a sense of readiness to accept the future as it arrives. All right, so I'm seeing comments in the comment area, so I hope you'll keep doing that. And now we'll start the Yania from Spain. We're going to start the Shabad now, and I hope you'll join along. Tan tan Ramdas ko jin siriya tine sumariya. Tan tan Ramdas ko jin siriya tine sumariya. Jin siriya tine sumariya. Jin siriya tine sumariya. Tan tan Ramdas ko jin siriya tine sumariya. Tan tan Ramdas ko jin siriya tine sumariya. पूरी होई कारमात आप सिरजनहारे डारिया. पूरी होई कारमात आप सिरजनहारे डारिया. सिकिया ते संगति पर ब्रह्म कर नमस्कारिया. सिकिया ते संगति पर ब्रह्म कर नमस्कारिया. पर ब्रह्म कर नमस्कारिया. पर ब्रह्म कर नमस्कारिया. Tan tan Ramdas ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਅਤਲ ਅਤਾ ਅਤੋਲ ਤੂੰ ਤੇਰਾ ਅੰਤਰ ਪਾਰ ਵਾਰਿਆ। ਅਤਲ ਅਤਾ ਅਤੋਲ ਤੂੰ ਤੇਰਾ ਅੰਤਰ ਪਾਰ ਵਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨੀ ਤੂੰ ਸੇਵਿਆ ਪਾਉ ਕਰ ਸੇ ਤੂੰ ਪਾਰ ਉਤਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨੀ ਤੂੰ ਸੇਵਿਆ ਪਾਉ ਕਰ ਸੇ ਤੂੰ ਪਾਰ ਉਤਾਰਿਆ। ਸੇ ਤੂੰ ਪਾਰ ਉਤਾਰਿਆ। ਸੇ ਤੂੰ ਪਾਰ ਉਤਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਲਾਭ ਲੋਭ ਕਾਮ ਕ੍ਰੋਧ ਮੋਹ ਮਾਰ ਕਤੇ ਤੂੰ ਸਪਰ ਵਾਰਿਆ। ਲਾਭ ਲੋਭ ਕਾਮ ਕ੍ਰੋਧ ਮੋਹ ਮਾਰ ਕਤੇ ਤੂੰ ਸਪਰ ਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਤੇਰਾ ਧੰਨ ਹੈ ਸੱਚ ਤੇਰਾ ਪੈਸਕਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਸੋ ਤੇਰਾ ਧੰਨ ਹੈ ਸੱਚ ਤੇਰਾ ਪੈਸਕਾਰਿਆ। ਸੱਚ ਤੇਰਾ ਪੈਸਕਾਰਿਆ। ਸੱਚ ਤੇਰਾ ਪੈਸਕਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਗੁਰ ਜਿਨ ਸਿਰਿਆ ਤਿਨੈ ਸੰਵਾਰਿਆ। ਨਾਨਕ ਤੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਤੂੰ ਹੈ ਗੁਰ ਅਮਰ ਤੂੰ ਵਿਚਾਰਿਆ। ਨਾਨਕ ਤੂੰ ਲੈਣਾ ਤੂੰ ਹੈ ਗੁਰ ਅਮਰ ਤੂੰ ਵਿਚਾਰਿਆ। ਗੁਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਤੂੰ ਮਨ
Satariya Gurudita Manna 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 Satariya Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya 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 Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Puri hoi karmat apsir jan hare dariya sekiya te sangati par brahm kar naam sakariya atla ata atol tu tera antan parvariya jinni tu seviya Omkar se tun par utariya lam lom kam krodh moh mar kade tun saparvariya tan so tera tan hai सच तेरा मैं सकारिया नानक तू रहना तू है गुर अमर तू विचारिया गुर दिता मानस दारिया गुर दिता मानस दारिया गुर दिता मानस दारिया Gurudita Manna Satariya Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya 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 Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Tan Tan Ramdas Gur Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Jinasiriya Tine Sumariya Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Satnam everyone, welcome. And I'm going to bring the computer a little closer so I can see who's here. Lots of regulars. Good to see you all. And We've got a few new names. Linda from New Hampshire. Yania from Spain. I think maybe you've been here before. And Maria. Yeah, I'm not sure if you've been here or not before. And Namhari from Mexico City, welcome. And Simi, yes, welcome. And then lots of regulars. Gurujit from UK, you're welcome. Jazz, Deva. Okay, so those of you who are regulars, you know that it's during this time that I usually talk about something related to either this Shabad or some general topics related to Sikh Dharma teachings. And welcome Gyanjot from Earth. Oh, very nice to have you with us. And from Morocco, yes, from Morocco, Yoga Somaya. Anyway, so I wanted to touch on a theme that I was talking some last session, which was Thursday last week, because it's still very prominent in the news, and that is the idea of injustice, specifically racial injustice and inequality. And I just wanted to sort of touch on that again because it's a deep topic, and many of us are being urged to think about this and to go within and look at ourselves, question our own tendencies one way or another. Those of us who are not from a background or from a heritage of color, in other words, those of us who are white, you know, we have lived with a privilege, and it's easy to discount that when you're in that privileged position, but it's much more difficult to accept that when you're a person of color. The kinds of disadvantages that we have put up with, the inequities that we have put up with for so long, you know, without getting into the politics of it, I just want to touch on the understanding of how we as human beings can find our way through this, to lay down that which we have picked up without maybe being aware of it, that we have picked up a tendency toward racism, a tendency toward inequality, and that it has at some point became a habit and an unconscious habit, and that it's really hard now to, first of all, accept that we are doing that. That's the first stage. Acceptance is to recognize within ourselves the times when we have allowed those thoughts to come forward in our thinking, and how, as people walking on the path of consciousness, it is our responsibility to address this. And if we look at the consciousness of the teachings on the yogic path and also on the path of a Sikh, we see that, you know, compassion is primary. It's fundamental. And I think through compassion, if you can feel, if you have empathy to what others may be going through, people of color, what they may be going through, then it's almost impossible to stay in this place of imbalance and injustice. So, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the history. Guru Nanak was the first Sikh Guru, and he was a person who traveled far and wide. And as you can imagine, 500 years ago, what that might have been like, there were no buses or trains. He walked most of the 40,000 miles, they say, that he traveled. Now, some of that was on boat, but the majority of it was on foot. And he would walk he would decide, okay, it's now time to move. And so he and his group, mainly it was just a musician, a lifelong friend of his, a Muslim, Mardana was his name. And he played the rabab, a stringed instrument from that area. And the rabab is still played. You can still find people performing with that instrument. And the players of the rabab are called rababis. And the rababis were very important in the courts of certainly the first four gurus, Guru Nanak, Guru Angad, Guru Amar Das, and Guru Ram Das. And then with the ascension of Guru Arjan to the throne of the guruship, there was a disagreement, and the eldest son of Guru Ram Das decided he should be the guru, even though Arjan, the younger son, had been chosen by Ram Das, Guru Ram Das. So the eldest son, Priti Chand, set up his own court, and Guru Arjan had his court, and people were confused. And so the Rababis at that time also got confused in their commitment, and they were seeking more financial benefits, so they decided they would try out the court of Priti Chand. And so the court of Guru Arjan was left without any Rababis. And the Rababis had been Muslims mainly. And there had been a strong tradition in that Islamic path of musicianship. And so that's why the Rababis were coming from that tradition. And also, they were welcomed because they respected the Guru, they provided beautiful music. There was no disharmony in having Muslims sitting in the Sangat with the Guru, And I think that is a theme that I want to just refresh a little bit in our eyes. That nowadays many Gurudwaras do not welcome people of other faiths very much, and especially to lead the kirtan. It is very unusual to see musicians of any other faith other than Sikh up on the stage performing kirtan. And I think that's a very sad statement about how far we have come from the teachings of Guru Nanak. And if we look back at that time, the Rababis went to the Priti Chand's court, and the Sikhs realized that if they wanted to have kirtan, if they wanted to have the music to sing with, to sing along with, then they needed to start learning themselves. And so upon Guru Arjan's decree, then it was stated that every Sikh should take on the challenge and the responsibility to educate themselves in the area of musical accompaniment so that they can do that. Now, it was never about really becoming the most skilled musician, although that was fine if that's what you wanted to do. But this was really about getting just good enough, at least, so that you could support the singing. Because when we do kirtan, especially in the Gurdwara, it is not a performance. The musicians are not performing for us. They are rather supporting the Sangat singing the Gurbani. The Gurbani is the primary experience, the experience of saying the Gurbani and singing it and chanting it and feeling that energy and that vibration within us, within the Sangat, is the primary focus. The musicians are there just to enable that, to make it easier, to make it feel more comfortable, to support it. And so that's why, even though there are some musicians who play the kirtan, who are really exceptionally skilled, they will rarely assert that kind of virtuosity, of musicianship, of instrumentation within the kirtan in the Gurdwara. They may do that another time in another place, and that's fine. But at the time that we are doing Gurbani kirtan in the Gurdwara, then it's really, the focus should be on the Gurbani. And yes, it's always improved, the experience is improved if the musicianship is very good, but that should not become the focus. So as these rababis left, and the responsibility of supporting the kirtan was on the shoulders of everybody else, just you and me, so to speak, then people had to find ways to learn the kirtan, the musicianship, the instruments. At that time, they did not have harmoniums. That was introduced about 150 years later with the arrival of the British, and specifically missionaries, Christian missionaries came to India, and they brought with them a simple pump organ that was pumped with the pedals, with the feet, sitting and playing the organ so that they could sing hymns in their service. Well, the sound of the pump organ was very attractive to Indians, but none of the traditions in India, the spiritual traditions, none of those sit in chairs or pews. They all sit on the floor. Well, you can't play the pump organ with your feet if you're sitting on the floor. So they took the bellows, which would drive the air through the pump organ, and they put it on the back of the harmonium, and that allowed it to come down onto the floor, and they would pump as today, you pump the bellows with one hand, not with your feet. And that also worked fine because most Indian music is not polyphonic. In other words, their focus is on the melody and not so much on the accompaniment lines. They don't have counterpoint. They don't have bass parts to go with the melody. They don't need the left hand, like in a piano where you'd have a left hand playing an accompaniment to the melody on the right hand. They don't use that in Indian music. It's not in their structure as part of their music. So they have this left hand with nothing to do, so therefore pumping the bellows seemed to be a really good way to solve that issue. And that left the right hand to focus on the melody, and which was all they needed. And so that's why the harmonium came along later. And today you'll find musicians playing Gurbani Kirtan on harmonium and on Western instruments, guitars and mandolins. But also there are still people who are playing these older stringed instruments from India that predate the arrival of the harmonium. And that's beautiful if you can experience that sometime. It's more rare to find musicians who can do that. But there are new movements that are arising of people who are learning to study those instruments and become adept at playing those and playing the Gurbani Kirtan with those. And one is neither better nor worse than the other. All of these instruments are valid, and because, as I say, the main thing is experiencing the singing of the words. And so whatever instrument you play, it doesn't matter. You know, the gurus used the instruments of their time and the musical styles of their time. That's what they knew. Today, you know, we have other choices that may speak to people in different ways. And so the fact that there are musicians now playing guitars and other instruments, that's, I think, just as it should be, as these things evolve and expand, so that others can hear the Gurbani, you know, framing it with music that is accessible to the people, therefore makes the Gurbani more easily to be offered to those people to have an experience with it. So, Pav Singh, I will get to your question, I think, at the end, but I'm just going to keep going for a little while. So I wanted to say that, you know, this having the musicians who were Rababis and Muslim, having them move away from the Gurdwara, and then, as I've told this story before, that the musicians who actually composed this Shabad, Dan Dan Ram Das Guru, as part of a longer composition, Balwan Divar, that those two musicians then they composed this as a way to try to gain their way back into the court of Guru Arjan, and they were embraced ultimately. And so it's exceptional that that this is a story that really speaks to us now, because these Muslim musicians, they moved out and they actually offended the Guru. You know, at that time they made comments that were offensive. But Guru Arjan, you know, he saw beyond that, and through the acts of a kind of penance, these musicians found their way back, and they were welcomed back. And so for quite a long time afterwards as well, Islamic musicians played in the courts of the gurus, and in the sangats, the Sikh sangats all around India, there were musicians of all traditions allowed to play, and people from all traditions came and sat in the sangat. There is research being done about how the kinds of traditions that are now seen as somewhat outside the Sikh path, but at that time were seen to be part of it. And there's a long list of these people, and you can kind of group them together with a term that's become known to historians and people who are talking about these issues, calling them Nanak-Panthis. In other words, people who followed the teachings of Guru Nanak. Now, that doesn't include all of the various groups as well, but it's a general term that we can sort of refer to that situation where there were lots of people who were at an earlier stage, you know, they were inside the door, they were inside the gates, so to speak. They were welcome. But there were changes that came, political changes especially, and by the early 20th century, by 1920s, there were movements within the Sikh community that started to narrow the definition of what was accepted. And that left a lot of people out in the cold. And I'm talking about this historical story because it reflects on how we as human beings, we make up these constructs in our head about who is us and who is them. And we separate, we divide, we then have someone that we can blame. If something goes wrong, it must be the other to blame, not us. And so today we can see on the streets of the U.S. and around the world too that people are saying enough. We don't want to live this way anymore as a society. We don't want inequality. We certainly don't want injustice for some groups, And this racism is certainly a big manifestation. It's not the only way that we separate, but we tend to have labels, and we separate just as the Sikhs have done and separated out some people from others. But I think that, if you simply look at the essence of what Guru Nanak taught, and I say that not to exclude the importance of all the other gurus, but rather to say Guru Nanak's teachings are primary. They're foundational. What the other gurus brought, that was building on the foundation. But we have to accept the foundation before we even step into any of the rest of it. And in the foundation of Sikh Dharma is this concept of equality. Not separated or high or low based on any kind of kind of characteristic, not gender, not race, not heritage, not sexual orientation. None of those things can be allowed to separate people out. The essential teaching of Guru Nanak is Omkar. And what that ik represents is the oneness, that we recognize the oneness of all, the oneness of the source of all, and the connection, the oneness of that connection, all people, all things connected to that essence. And, sometimes people talk about Sikh Dharma or Sikhism, and they describe it to someone who knows not much about that. They'll describe it as being monotheistic. And that's actually not correct. There is polytheism, where you have many gods, and then there is monotheism, which is like Christianity, although, if you really look at Christianity, they also have a trinity, which gets a little confusing. But nonetheless, my point is that Sikh Dharma is actually monism. It means that it doesn't look to one God being somewhere else, and the creation is separate from that creator, but rather that this monism is the idea that the essence, the creation, the creative force, and all is oneness, one experience, one connection. And that is the teaching of Guru Nanak. And so we cannot look at another person and separate, judge. We cannot put them in a classification that is less than. We have to be able to see through the eyes of the other to see that we are the same. I am the other. The other is me. We are experiencing this world together. And therefore I have no right, no justification, no power to impose anything that makes the experience of the other less than my experience. I can't put a system of a judicial system, a system of laws that keeps the other suppressed so that I can rise. That is definitely not in line with this idea that we are one. So I know this is a difficult time because we're dealing with so many layers of stress. The COVID-19 pandemic is really concerning for a lot of people, and it's real, And then to have this situation come around, people wanting to say enough of this imbalance, enough of this inequality, enough of this injustice. We have to change. And they're linked. The fact that we have been indoors or based at home, it's really forcing us to go within ourselves. And I think that's what's enabling people in this moment to say, no, I won't accept this. This is not right, that other people are being persecuted because of their color. That's just not acceptable anymore. And we can see that it's also a sign of the change of the age. Those of us who have been practicing Kundalini Yoga or gone through teacher training may be familiar with this concept of the Aquarian Age. And that's what's manifesting this too, is that we are fully connected around the world. We know what's going on, and we are in the streets because we are more aware, more willing to own responsibility for our brothers and sisters, more willing to step into maturity as a civilization. It was adolescent to think that we could claim some special power over other people. That's not coming into fullness as an Aquarian human. We have to move beyond that. So I've talked a lot, and I know I said I would get to Pav's question. And let me just display it really quickly. It's not exactly on the topic we've been talking, but he's asking, is there a difference between the Shabad and the Anahat Shabad? All right, so we have to sort of define these terms a little bit. So Anahat is about, Anahat means unstruck. There is this quality in the Shabad. The Shabad means word. We use this word Shabad to refer to all of Gurbani. In other words, the compositions that are included in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib and others written by Guru Gobind Singh. Right? So that's all considered Gurbani and therefore Shabad. So we refer to this Shabad as anything in that group. But we recognize that the power of the Shabad is not just in the meaning of the words, but the sound current that we experience when we make those sounds is called Nad. And there's two types of Nad. There's Ahat Nad, which is the struck sound, like when you hit a gong or a bell, or your voice, or you play an instrument. That's the Ahat Nad. But there is this other quality called Anahat, which is the unstruck sound. So the Anahat Nad is that Nad which emanates spontaneously within you or flows from the infinite source, and we connect to it in our meditation. In our meditative awareness, we can experience that anahat. So the difference between Shabad and anahat Shabad is that if what you're referring to with anahat Shabad, meaning anahat nad, that sound, that experience of hearing the Shabad in a very subtle way that has nothing to do with the experience of making it or chanting it or singing it. That's the difference, is that Shabad, when we chant it aloud, is exactly that. It's an experience of making the sound and experiencing that sound. But the Anahat Shabad is more subtle. It's within the meditative space. And I hope that gives you some understanding. I hope that explains that a little bit. All right, so I'm going to draw this now to a close. I appreciate all of you listening, and I hope that my words helped you to understand a little of something. I hope my words inspired continuing change, as a civilization. I hope that we continue to embrace this challenge, to move on. And there is an announcement in the comments section about a global virtual Sahajpat that Sikh Dharma International is doing. And so if you want to find out more, the link is there in the comments section. And I also want to remind you, as you see in the feed along the bottom, that my guest on Friday will be Prabha Omkar. And if you don't know her, she is the mother of Sanat Kaur, and they have done recordings together. And Prabha Omkar has also done some recordings of her own. And she is a beloved Kirtani in our community, and very inspiring. And she has some great wisdom to share with us, I believe. And she's also a lot of fun. So I expect it to be a great session on Friday. And so I'll be here Thursday. And I'm letting you know that I'll be back next week as well, Tuesday and Thursday. But next week's Friday program will not be the Home Kirtan and Chat program, because we will be participating in an online program from 3HO, our sister nonprofit organization, who is putting on a virtual kind of solstice program, because as many of you know, normally that organization, 3HO, puts on an in-person, very large gathering here in New Mexico of 2,000 plus people. I think 2,500 was last year, up in the mountains, and they are not able to do that, of course, with COVID-19, but they're doing a 3-day virtual experience, what they're calling an e-summit. And so that Friday will be the first day of the e-summit next week, and we will be featuring a class that day from Sikh Dharma International as part of the summit. It'll be in their feed, but we will give you more information about that as we get closer to that time. So thank you again for being with us, and please share this class, this program out to those you know. Please like it, and all love and blessings for you. We'll see you on Thursday, and may you stay safe, may you stay healthy, and may you stay home if you can. Satnam. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.